and decade by decade, and soon you got a superstructured life that's got all these little blocks all knocked out. They're not there. They're missing. And it might look nice to the human eye, but you let the winds of adversity come by. Yeah. You let a crisis come by, and oftentimes it's going to cave in like a house of cards. And some folks, they got their life. I had a little church up in Alaska when I was a missionary, and I'd have folk come in my office. They want to counsel, which most of the time meant they wanted me to put a stamp of approval on what they'd already determined they were going to do. Not all the time, but more times than I'd want to admit. And I'd sit there and listen to some folks, and I'd wonder, how could somebody get their life in such a mess? I'm talking to a fellow one time, he's only about 30 years old, and I mean, his life was just an absolute horrendous mess. Then they come in, and they want you to wave the Bible over their head, and, hocus pocus, mini minocus, and everything's just fine. No, folks, it doesn't work like that. I mean, some folks come in, and they got their life resembles an explosion in a spaghetti factory. I mean, you can't tell where one problem leaves off, another problem begins, and it's all knotted up like some tight string that got all wound up, and then they want everything to be all right just in a moment and everything. No, it doesn't. Be not deceived, for God is not mocked, for whatsoever man soweth, that shall he also reap. And oftentimes when that cargo comes back in, and the harbor master calls, you don't want to go down to unload that mess. It went out. It was a wonder, boy. I mean, that ship just out there, the whistle's blowing, and everything looked like that whole cargo just shining in the sun. But if it was built on the wrong things, it goes out there and you sow them wild oats, and it comes back in, and it's a rotting, stinking, putrefying mess. And you're going to have to go out there and unload it. Now, I thank God, and you probably do too, all my crops didn't come in. Thank God. Thank God I've had some crop failures. I'm glad of that. If they'd all come in, I'd probably be dead. More than likely, I'd have been dead anyway. But this life is just transient. And folks always, they're worried about the will of God and everything. And usually when they're worried about something 10 years from now. What about right now, folks? See, are you in the will of God right now? I mean, directly in the center of God's will right now. If you're not, what makes you think you'll be in God's will next week? What makes you get some idea that 10 years from now, you're going to be in the will of God? If you're not in the will of God right now, you're probably not going to be in the will of God tomorrow. More than likely, you ain't going to be in the will of God next week. And you sure ain't going to be in the will of God next year, probably. And 10 years from now, you can forget about that. Folks, I used to pray, God, to give me light and everything. And this is the truth. I finally quit praying that, preacher, because I'm telling you what, I got enough light right now, folks, to hang me as high as Pike's Peak when I stand before Jesus Christ. What I need is not more light. I just got to turn a few of the lights off. What I need is the gumption and the guts and the fortitude to step up to the plate and man up and do what I know to be the will of God and the light that God's already given me. I need to live my life according to that. And the way you get future light, that's the way you do it. You do what God's told you to do now. You take, it's one of just minor things, you listen, you know it's the will of God to read the Bible, you know it's the will of God to pray, you know it's the will of God to witness. Are you doing them things? Yeah. You say, well, that's just, that's the will of God. Listen, when I got saved, I didn't get saved in a church. I got saved in a hospital over at the Lincoln Memorial Hospital on Howard and West Grand Boulevard. It's no longer there. It tore it down like Tiger Stadium and everything else, I guess. But when I got saved, I didn't know nothing. You talk about ignorant. Man, I was ignorant. I didn't know nothing. All my buddies in the old neighborhood, most of them were Catholics. And I used to run with them. And I always thought the Catholics had a pretty good system. I mean, I'd go with these guys and we'd be out doing all kind of mischief and everything, and they'd go to this to confession. They were just worried to death, wringing their hands. But we'd go down there, been out all day Friday, and, messing around. Come in Saturday, they'd go to confession. And I thought, I'm going to the Catholic church, and they have a little bowl of water out there. And this is the truth. I wasn't trying to be funny or sacrilegious or nothing, but I didn't know what it was for. But I was tired anyway, so I'd take it and splash it on my neck and everything. I thought, these people think of everything. That's very kind of them to give you some water to refresh yourself with. That's what I thought it was for. I wasn't trying to be smart. I just thought, I didn't know what it was for. I just splash it in my face, wake myself up. And then I'd go and sit on one of the back pews, and they had these little things like a barber's chair that would pop out to prop your feet up on. I thought, man, that's cool. These Catholics, man, they think of everything. I plop back there, prop my feet up there. I didn't know that was for kneeling. I thought it just make yourself comfortable. prop your feet up on. I'd wait there. My buddies would go in this little phone booth looking thing and talk to this fellow through this little knothole. And, they go in there, man, they're trying to figure out what the venial sins was and what the mortal, they're trying to figure out what they had to tell that guy in there and what they didn't have to tell him. But I noticed, they'd be in there and he'd give them the hocus pocus, mini minocus, do 10 Hail Marys and all this. And they'd come out and their countenance was changed. And they were happy. And we go back out and pick up where we left off. I thought, man, if I ever become anything, I'm going to become a Catholic. That's pretty cool, man. Just go out and do what you want to do. Go in and get the slate white clean, and I'll do that. That's what I'm going to be. And that's all I knew. I didn't know nothing else. I mean, I preached my first sermon out of the book of Job. I did. What are you talking about a job, brother? I did it. But he told me, he said, well, that's not Job, that's Job. I said, no. Look, I don't know where you went to school, but where I went to school, J-O-B has and will always spell job. Not Job, job. It may be Job in Massachusetts, but in Detroit, it's job. And I said, listen, besides all that, I said, you don't understand these theological matters. You see, all these names in the Bible mean something. Eeby Dooby Flam Flam Gap Shishu Shim Shim. All the names mean something. I don't know, some of them I don't know what it means, but they all mean something. I said, now here's a man in the Bible that if a man ever had a job put on him by the devil, it was this guy. So God wanted us to know a job by the devil when we saw it. So he had this fellow called, and he called him Job, put the book in the Bible, so we'd know a job by the devil when we saw it. That sounded pretty theological to me. And it was job for a long, long time. I didn't know anything different. I didn't know, honestly, I didn't know what grace was. Folks talk about getting saved, looking back to Calvary or head to Calvary. I didn't get saved. I got saved looking ahead to the future, to hell. Yeah. I didn't want to go to hell. I heard an old-fashioned Baptist preacher. He scared me half to death. And when I don't even know if he mentioned hell, but when I got out of there, brother, I knew I was going to hell. I was positive of that thing. If somebody didn't do something more than I was able to do, I was going to wind up going to hell. And I got saved because I didn't want to go to hell. I don't know why you got saved, but I got saved because I didn't want to go to hell. And I'm telling you what's the truth of the matter, my friend. Like I said, I was ignorant when it comes to the Bible, but man, I got saved, and all I knew was, because I didn't get saved there at that church first time I heard the gospel, but I knew I got to get back to that little church where that preacher scared me to death. Nobody told me that. A lady led me to the Lord from Temple Baptist Church. She never told me to go. She definitely wouldn't tell me to go back to that little church. She had told me to come over to Temple. God must, either God or I thought the thing up. And I don't know why I thought it up, because I surely didn't enjoy myself the first trip there. I mean, I sat there and that guy pointed every time he pointed. His finger got longer and he pointed it right at me. Every time with a one, just 200 people in here. Point the thing at somebody else, Just talking about how bad I was, Man, there's other folk in here. Just talk about them. But I went back there because I believe that's what God wanted me to do. I didn't know about baptism. I didn't know about eternal security. I didn't know about tithing. I didn't know about witnessing. I didn't know about nothing. All I knew was I got to somehow get back to that little Baptist church. And you know what I did? That's what I did. I acted on the only light that I had. I didn't walk up there with my wallet open and ready to tithe. I wasn't witnessing to every Tom, Dick, and Harry come down the pike. I went back to the little church. That's all the light. Now, if you will act on the light God's given you, I guarantee you, He'll give you some more light. But if you won't live and you won't act on the lights God given you, don't worry about no more light. Because light rejected will turn around like lightning and it'll kill you slap dead. And life is a transient thing. It's always moving. And it is moving toward the grave, as we see in our last point. Life is not only transient, but it's terminal. Said there in verse number 2, coming forth like that flower, he's cut down, he fleeth also as a shadow, and continueth not. There's an end to it, folks. Now, we don't like to think about it, and I would say to dwell on it too much would be rather morbid and unhealthy. But the fact of the matter is, you are going to die. The oldest gray-haired saint of God in this building, right down to the youngest baby out there in the nursery, if Jesus tarries long enough, you're going to die. No doubt about it. You're going to die. We know that. It's a scientific fact. Did my own survey once, and I found out 9 out of 9 people die.